After this program, please call 948-8111 with your comments.
Hello, I'm Vicky Fujiwara of Windward Video. Last May, the CONCON elections managed to attract the lowest voter turnout in the history of the state. Then in June, 20,000 people signed petitions asking the CONCON to pass some form of initiative, referendum, and recall. Public opinion surveys also showed that 86% of the people in the state wanted IR&R. Well, these events came to the attention of the Access to Government Project at the University of Hawaii. It's their job to find out, for the federal government, if people in Hawaii feel left out of the way government works, if they've become alienated from the system. The Access to Government people thought that a lack of interest in voting and a strong interest in IR&R might have something to say about how people feel about government. So they asked us to go down to the CONCON and out into the community to ask about it. This is what we found. We begin at the end of the CONCON with Delegate Paul DiBianco's assessment of how things work there.
Some of them committed their votes on issues that were really important to the public and to their constituents for such minor things as a vice chairmanship of a small committee, a vague promise of maybe some help in the future if they ever decide to run again. I knew that there would be people who sold out. I knew that there were people who were going to place personal ambition ahead of the good of their constituents, but the price that people sold out for here was just amazing. They went so cheap.
The CONCON had been billed as a grassroots convention, and at first it looked like the idea had really caught on. Over 700 people ran for the CONCON elections, even though only about 102 of them could actually be elected. But then, on election day, only 1/3 of the registered voters in the state actually turned out to elect those 102 delegates. And of those delegates who did get elected, it looked as though most of them didn't agree with the 86% of the public who said they were in favor of IR&R. In fact, none of the so-called direct democracy proposals made it out of the CONCON and on to the November ballot. It looked as though public opinion had lost at the CONCON, but what exactly had won? If public opinion wasn't being represented here, what was? Finding answers to that takes us back to an August 10th newspaper article about John Pennebaker, a CONCON delegate from Waimanalo. Pennebaker's statement denounced IR&R, saying that it was a struggle for political power between newcomers to Hawaii who wanted power and longtime residents who had it, thereby drawing subtle racial lines between those who support or oppose IR&R. That night, the Waimanalo Neighborhood Board met and considered a resolution which rejected both Pennebaker's views and his authority to represent the community. The board went on record in the resolution as favoring initiative, referendum, and recall as a chance for more direct democracy. Board member John Knox.
In his newspaper statements, Mr. Pennebaker implied that initiative, referendum, and recall would destroy the political power of local people. He says that these somehow represent old mainland-style values which go against the island way of life. What he does not say is what the island way of doing things is supposed to be. My guess, and it is only a guess, is that Mr. Pennebaker looks around and sees a system in which people often do not try to get things done themselves, but instead rely on powerful friends and highly placed family connections. And for many people, this system of powerful friends is certainly the way things do get done in Hawaii. At any rate, Mr. Chairman, I think that Mr. Pennebaker is arguing that the system of powerful friends is better for local people because it gives them connections which most newly arrived residents don't have. And even if your friend, your connection, your clout actually does have some power, that system of powerful friends leaves the power with the friends and not with the people. Mr. Chairman, John Pennebaker may have good reason to feel satisfied with the system of powerful friends. He has them. But I think most Waimanalo residents would prefer the power of a direct vote. Thank you.
When the board unanimously adopted the resolution, there was an objection from the audience.
Yeah, this very one resolution says Mr. Pennebaker's views do not represent Waimanalo. Who put him in office?
Yes, he represents us, but because he's representing us, I think he should also take our views into hand.
Well, it says here, views do not represent those of the residents of Waimanalo.
I believe that.
Well, we put them in office.
Right.
I don't know about that. I did.
You're wrong when you say we get them in. It's a group or machine that gets people in. You see. Now, let me finish this. Under the guise of unionism, I was born in the union house. I was raised in the union house. I'm a union man and I'll die a union man. But we have people that are calling themselves union, and Pennybacker are parodying these so-called union leaders. Our government, the people that you say that we should protect, they should go down the drain. Now, these are the people Pennybacker, people are pulling his string. These very people, they are frightened of initiative referendum, because this is the only tool we have in Hawaii to get rid of these people.
No, it isn't.
Let me speak up. This same man, this same group about power structure in Hawaii, they appointed judges. So you tell me we don't need initiative referendum and recall? We need it. And what I object to mostly is a damn fool that gets up there and treat us taxpayers like irresponsible children and won't give us the opportunity to make the choice come November. And we should be given that right to do that. That's what I have to say.
Thank you.
If the Waimanalo people suspect a system of powerful friends and union influence in elections, there may be a reason. Many of those status quo delegates who were elected were endorsed by organized labor, and the HGEA had especially encouraged government workers to run and to vote on Election Day. But how could those votes have affected the outcome of such a crowded race? Some people say it's because of all those candidates. Most of them were in favor of reforms, such as initiative and referendum, and there were just a few candidates opposed. So the voters who were opposed to INR knew who to vote for, while the voters who were in favor of reforms and change had so many candidates to choose from that their votes were split evenly between them. On top of that, only 34% of the voters turned out, resulting in a disproportionate share of candidates opposed to IR&R getting elected. But this situation raises some questions. If delegates are elected by such a small percentage of the voters, what then becomes of their responsibility to the rest of the community? Are they responsible only to those people who elected them? And why isn't the community voting? We asked Carol Zachary of the citizens group Common Cause.
You're looking at an almost turned off voter, and I'm a terribly political person at this point. And I'm feeling this among our membership of 1,300 in this state. More and more they're getting turned off because more and more people are recognizing the influence of money in campaigns and the fact that even though you go out to vote, your vote doesn't count when it comes to getting access by the representative you voted into office. Unless you give a certain amount or over a certain amount, in many cases you're not guaranteed any access as a citizen. Well, I'm turned off, and so are a lot of people to that. So I think money is the crux of that evil.
There's a letter to the editor in this paper which says, "Our CONCON has one element in common with the federal government. It is government of the special interest, by the special interest, and for the special interest. And the people get what they ordinarily get, nothing much." Now, if a special interest group can put money into a campaign and can turn its membership lists into votes, then it's easy to understand how special interest groups have come to be so important to the way our government works. But what does this mean for the politician? Robert Tyra, state senator and CONCON delegate opposed to IR&R.
First of all, you gotta make a difference now. Money can be this much. It can be $5, $10, $20, or it can be $500 or $1,000. See, so we're talking about candidates receiving big money from certain special interest group. Well, human beings being what they are, they're going to be beholden to some degree to that kind of a group that's making a large campaign donation to the candidate. So, as I was saying a while ago, with a lid on campaign spending, the need to have big money come into one's campaign fund hopefully would be removed.
But a campaign spending law won't hold up in the courts unless public funds are involved, which means the public will have to help pay for campaigns in order to control how much gets spent in them. The CONCON passed the proposal that Senator Tyra was talking about. It would set up a fund for partial public financing of campaigns and would set a limit for the amount that can be contributed to a campaign and the amount that can be spent in a campaign. The proposal will be on the November ballot, and it will be up to the voters to determine the fate of money's influence in campaigns.
Maybe what we ought to do in this representative democracy is to have people run for office every year and have all expenses of elections be borne by the state or the local government. And then whether this is constitutional, I don't know, but forbid all newspaper advertisements, all TV advertisements, so that what happens is that in a race for the House or the Senate or for governor, the person himself goes before a group, discusses issues, so on. See, what's happening in this community is that many candidates, as they prepare their campaigns for public office, realizing the cost of making brochures, taking newspaper ads out, if they go on TV, the high cost of that, they got to have campaign funds. Otherwise, only millionaires be running.
One special interest group, which has completely reversed its position on initiative and referendum, is organized labor. At one time, union officials pushed for IR&R in order to break the Republican Big Five power structure held in the state and to gain some rights for workers. Now that organized labor is part of the power structure itself, union officials have been working against initiative and referendum for the same reasons they once worked for it. It might change the way government works. We wanted to talk to David Trask of the HGEA about this, but he was unwilling to be interviewed. So instead we spoke with Henry Epstein of the United Public Workers. We asked him if he didn't think initiative and referendum was a threat to the power of organized labor.
The unions have a little bit of power now, but it's shared with a lot of other groups. And there's no one group that has the kind of power that the Republican Party and the Big Five had before. But I think that you've got to fight for your interests, and our members are doing it to a degree. Other people are doing it, and it's going to be true whether or not you have initiative.
But couldn't initiative provide some legislative clout for the public?
Yeah, but on the other hand, it may provide a beautiful tool for the special interest groups. We can go out and collect signatures. We can finance bumper stickers or TV programs if we have to. And I think it's one of these things which sounds like a good idea, but people are going to be disappointed in. We do have a responsive legislature. Anybody in Honolulu can go down on his lunch hour to the Capitol and grab a representative or a senator. A lot of the legislators leave their doors open, even though it destroys the air conditioning.
Senator Tyra would agree.
Many of us who have been in government service, and I've been a politician for 16 years, I have seen representative government at work, and I am firmly convinced that this works well here. And there are others who may not have been exposed to the governmental process here in Hawaii like I have been.
So basically what you're saying is that it's a matter of the people who are involved in government know how it works, as opposed to the people who are outside of government don't know how it works and therefore think they need initiative to make it work better?
Well, I may be wrong, but it's not only a case of people being outside of government. I'm just wondering if these people who are pushing initiative, referendum, recall strongly have even tried to be part of the governmental process. Frankly, I don't know whether these people have taken the time and effort to try to communicate with those of us in public office.
But the public opinion polls disagree with Senator Tyra's confidence in government responsiveness. The Access to Government Project found that 66% of the people they talked to felt that the public doesn't have much of a say in how things are run, and 74% feel that businessmen have too much say. Waimanalo was included in these polls, so we went back there to talk to Neighborhood Board Chairman Al Lewis. We asked him and former board member Jenny Kamau about the results of these polls.
This government doesn't listen to the people. You have to have a, like I call many of the legislators, some will respond, some won't. At least some kind of consideration, a letter, a phone call. At least we know they have an open ear. But most of them you call, there is no response at all.
Does this mean that the community has no confidence in government?
They just want us to, or they want us to think like they do. And most of the people are outspoken. What we feel is what we're saying. Some of them are so educated, they don't use common sense. And that's all we have is common sense. We're not educated, but we feel for the problem. I don't think government will ever let the people say that much.
According to polls, over 80% of the people here are in favor of initiative. Yet you have a Con delegate who is opposed to it. Does this create, what kind of feeling does this create in the community?
I think the whole community or the whole district per se has to accept that responsibility. I mean, ultimately down the line, and even Robert Rules of Order says the majority shall prevail. And in this case, the majority did prevail, and we got what we elected. But I feel that whoever's elected should be responsive to his constituents. I'm against high-rises, but then again, if 90% of the people in Waimanalo said they wanted high-rises, then I would have to reevaluate my stance on that particular issue, because that's what the community wants.
Do you think that if people had the right to initiative, that you'd see much more involvement in government on the part of people?
I think there's a lot of issues that the legislators, councilmen and so forth would rather pass on, or what do they call it, sweep it under the carpet and so forth. But then again, these are issues that will never fade or will never die. They'll always be with us. And I think, it's important to give the people of the state of Hawaii an opportunity to say, this is what we want, or this is what we don't want.
The County of Hawaii has initiative and referendum provisions in its charter, and when the County Council voted to fluoridate the water supply, Big Island residents got up a petition, held a referendum, and overturned the council decision 4-1. We asked Con delegate Helene Hale how Big Island people feel about government responsiveness. I would imagine in Hilo people feel that their representatives know the problems and know the kinds of people. Is there a more closeness between them?
It's a smaller community, and obviously there's more closeness, but there's still alienation. There's still a feeling that people are not. Once they get elected, they forget who put them in office. But by and large, I think people feel that too many of the people that they elect are not responsive. And I'd just like to take this Con as a good example. Last night we had a very important issue of education, and we almost didn't have a quorum. There was a question as to whether we had a quorum, because one delegate who was elected as a delegate was having a party to get himself elected to be a senator. And a great mass of the delegates weren't even there to vote on this very important issue of education, which I think affects everybody, whether you have children or not. It's your tax money. Now, I was very, very disappointed that people would go to a cocktail party or a political rally after they had asked to be elected to the Constitutional Convention, and an important decision-making committee of the whole meeting was held, and they didn't show up. Even our president was almost a half hour late.
That's a good example. Kauai people know this vehicle as the Shockmobile, and its driver is George Taguma, one of the organizers of the Stop High-Rise on Kauai movement. The Shock Group used the initiative and referendum provision in the county charter to enforce the law, not to change it. By law, buildings on Kauai can't be higher than 4 stories, but when AMFAC asked the Planning Commission for approval of a 6-story hotel at Poipu Beach, the Commission found a loophole in the law and told AMFAC to go ahead. So George and a few others formed Shock, and the success of the petition drive was such that AMFAC will now build a 4-story hotel. Councilwoman Joanne Yukimura is an elected official who has seen IR&R work and likes what it can do.
At all. I think it really strengthens the democratic process. For one, elected officials aren't perfect, and initiative and referendum are perfect for the time when you know, any citizens have no other alternatives when their elected officials have been completely unresponsive. And that was the case of Shock. We wouldn't have been able to do anything if we hadn't had the initiative process. But the other thing is it really gives citizens a sense of being able to do something, you know, and it takes away this feeling of helplessness and alienation because they know they have this other channel. And I really saw that happening. People were so glad that they could do something.
We wondered how a small grassroots movement like Shock was able to gain such widespread support.
Future, I think it's because people are so concerned about the island that they got involved in Shock. And it's not just a small minority from the fact that so many people signed it. And I think we'll see in November when it's put on the ballot that really the majority of the people feel very strongly on Kauai, that we have a very special thing going here, and we want to keep it not only for the people and residents who live here, but for the tourists who come here, because I think many tourists come here because they don't want to see the high-rises that they live in right now, many.
We wanted to find out more about IR&R and about how the majority of delegates at the convention were able to justify opposing what 85% of the public favored. We repeatedly asked John Pennybacker for an interview, but he and many other delegates opposed to IR&R were not willing to be interviewed. Most deferred to John Wai'hi'i, who appeared to be the group's unofficial spokesman. And do you think people then are looking to initiative and referendum to provide responsiveness in government that's not existing now?
It's probably a catchword for that feeling.
But you don't think that initiative and referendum will provide that responsiveness?
No, I don't.
Okay, why not?
I don't think, it depends who you want government or who government should be responsive to. See, the idea about our form of government is that it allows for checks and balances. And the problem I have with initiative is that it's a win or lose proposition. And all of this decision making will be in booths, secret booths across Hawaii, so that the people opposed to the particular decisions being made won't know who they can take their case to. Who are the real decision makers? You see, whereas in the legislature, you know your representative. You can go down there, you can, in the last analysis, threaten to break his arm or something. You know, I mean, you know who is responsible, you know who to hold accountable. Specifically, I think initiative would probably work to hurt poor people and minority people in Hawaii for these reasons. Okay, number one, as a general rule, they're not registered to vote. Okay, so they're not going to be. This tool starts off being a strike against it. The second thing is that there is no one in the system that they can identify where an initiative to be started as to who they could make their feelings known to.
Let's go back to Carol Zachary to see what she thinks about that.
If an initiated measure takes away or takes away minority rights or discriminates against the majority or the minority, it is not immune to court review, just like any legislative measure is not immune to court review. Somebody is held accountable, and the courts can rule on that and say that is wrong. As far as taking away the accountability of legislators, if legislators are sensitive to the issues that the public feels are important, they, in fact, are going to pass something before the citizens have a chance to really work it over on the initiative. Yes, the initiative makes the people accountable for their own actions. Well, that's a democratic system. We should be.
It seems to me that there are some people who could be classified as poor and in the minority that I've heard say they want initiative or they want referendum. They think it's going to give them more power in government. Do you think people don't know enough about initiative to be able to decide whether they really want it or not?
Well, I think the public doesn't know as much about initiative as it should, if that's what you're asking me. People are entitled to want whatever they want. But for myself, I think I have an obligation to analyze what we're deciding upon and what we're discussing, and to see whether the interests that I feel should be protected are being protected.
Wai'i'i's view of his responsibility as an elected official to protect certain interest groups is disputed by his fellow delegate Paul DiBianco, who thought the public should decide about IR&R.
My view of the Constitutional Convention is not that we're supposed to be deciding what's good and what's bad for the state of Hawaii. My view of what we're doing here is we're supposed to be deciding what issues the public wants to see on the November ballot so that they can make the decision. And we should temper it only by A, not glutting up the ballot with a lot of miscellaneous things, B, not glutting up the ballot with a lot of things that could be handled by the legislature through statute, and 3, I think we should not put anything up there that's unconstitutional. But short of that, I think we should always err on the side of putting things on the ballot.
We asked Senator Tyra how he felt about polls that showed 85% of the public in favor of IR&R.
Well, I'm not going to say that the people don't know what they're doing, but I think that if our people knew exactly what these changes, like initiative referendum, might bring about in the final objective to be realized, that the people may change their minds. You want to take a statewide issue? You want to take capital punishment? That's the same idea. I think capital punishment is favored by maybe about 60 to 65% of people, according to polls, and there's a strong minority of 30 to 35% who are very much opposed to capital punishment. Well, something like that on the initiative, I think it will pass. And whether it's a good idea to impose that kind of a law on about 30 to 35% of our people, I don't think that's right. I would rather take more time and have our legislature go into this a little more, and have the governor's office have a hand in the veto process. So, to me, this is a slow process, but it is a much better process because you have more checks and balances.
What about these risks of negative legislation through IR&R? We asked Carol Zachary.
Initiative, like any other democratic tool, is a double-edged sword. It relies on a sophisticated, enlightened, educated electorate. To deny us that is to say that we're not sophisticated, we're not educated, we're not enlightened. Now, we could well pass a capital punishment bill through the initiative. The polls have shown time and again that that is important to people. The way is not to bottle that up in committee in the legislature. That just puts a cap on a public bomb. That just makes the public angrier than they already are and more turned off than they already are, and that's no answer. Give the public a chance to express it. If it passes, for those of us who would obviously be distressed by it, we might be able to pass another initiative in a year or 2 or 3 or 10 to deny that or to take that away with more education.
As we finished talking to people about IR&R, the CONCON was in its final days and in the process of putting the cap on IR&R. A last attempt at an indirect initiative proposal had failed, and Delegate Jackie Chong expressed the feelings of other delegates and citizens who had wanted the public to decide about initiative.
Many delegates are taking it upon themselves to decide whether the state of Hawaii ought to have initiative. The actions of those delegates who are deciding the fate of such an important issue, as though they possess the consummate wisdom to decide what the public ought to have and ought not to have, will have far-reaching and very damaging implications throughout the state.
When other delegates later rose to speak against the initiative proposal, one angry observer from the gallery shouted, "Are you calling me stupid?" And then Delegate John Pennybacker expressed his objection to the observer's remark. And so ended the debate of initiative, referendum, and recall at the $2.5 million Constitutional Convention. Even though public opinion lost the struggle for initiative and referendum at the Constitutional Convention, the larger effort for a more direct democracy may be only beginning. Both the state legislature and the city council can enact IR&R, but it may take more than public opinion alone to determine what gets legislated. When the majority of people abandon their role in the political process, it makes it easy for special interest groups to step in and influence the outcome. So if people want to bring about a shift in power, they may have to take a cue from the special interest groups and begin to get out the vote.
You know, I really don't think that we're ignorant or naive or we don't know what government is all about. I think we've never been given the opportunity to participate in government. Hopefully one of these days initiative will pass, and the common citizen will have an opportunity to voice his opinions.
Please call 948-8111 with your comments. 948-8111.